The next period of fighting for Marja was also not peaceful. Despite the significant ISAF forces in the area, coalition forces were still struggling with the problem of IEDs placed along the roads and later in drainage ditches, when the Taliban noticed that most ISAF soldiers were using them as trenches during shelling. In addition, terrorist attacks began to occur, including on civilians and even elders who had some contact with ISAF forces. The aim was, of course, to intimidate the population. By the end of March 2010, it is estimated that all the Taliban had been driven out of the city of Marja. Although sporadic fire from Taliban snipers appeared on average 3-4 times a day until the end of June, in June 2010, there were also exchanges of fire almost daily in the Marja area. The rebels were driven out, weakened, but over time they began to attack again. In the district, skirmishes with the Taliban and attacks using IEDs occurred practically several times a week. The ongoing attacks began to undermine confidence in ISAF and ANA forces and the new strategy, and reinforce the belief among the population that the Taliban would indeed return. However, during the clearing phase, the Taliban were deprived of an important base of operations and a good source of income. The aid distribution system for the Afghan population turned out to be a very important task, but it did not bring the expected results. Despite many efforts and implemented projects or made promises, the civilian population was very distrustful. The residents of Marja emphasized in conversations with soldiers that Marja had never been a safe place. After the Taliban, who ruled previously, came the Kabul government soldiers and foreigners from ISAF. Some expressed the opinion that it was not known who was crueler. However, aid programs related to the development of agriculture and changing the profile of crops from opium to another were introduced with some success. Although here another problem arose because some of the lands of the families who evacuated were taken over by other residents, who in turn did not want to give up the taken over land, even if their owners returned to Marja. Before withdrawing their people from Marja, the Taliban also warned the population that they would soon return and warned against cooperating with allies. They also encouraged people to send their sons and brothers to the Taliban to fight together against the outsiders. For this reason, very few people applied for the new jobs offered to civilians. The population was intimidated and reluctant to cooperate. 4 months into the offensive, the former Taliban stronghold that was supposed to be a showcase for what Western military might and the Afghan government's expanded services could achieve became something of a cautionary tale. In December 2010, Operation Moshtarak was officially declared over and the city secured. As of early December 2010, 61 U.S., British, and ANA soldiers had been reported killed in the district as part of the operation. Throughout 2010, the number of Taliban fighters killed in the operation as a whole may have risen to upwards of 200 to 300 as fighting continued, including subsequent clearing operations in the area. However, these figures are approximate, as precise counts are difficult due to the chaotic nature of the fighting and the lack of official documentation from Taliban sources. Moreover, Taliban casualties were a mix of those killed in direct combat, by airstrikes and other engagements. The operation was considered one of the largest joint operations of the war in Afghanistan. And despite heavy fighting, coalition forces succeeded in securing parts of the Helmand region, although Taliban resistance remained in the area even after the offensive. The operation winning the hearts and minds turned out to be much more difficult than expected. And not always drawing a rifle here would solve the problem. The Soviets learned this, and the Allied forces learned this at Marja too. It was soon to turn out that this applies to the whole of Afghanistan. Meanwhile, the Operation Enduring Freedom was still ongoing.